So when the apocalyptic vision comes to Christianity, as it does at the turn of the millennium, as it does in the 1500s, when the Reformation occurs, it is this swelling yearning to align our understanding, our social understanding, our emotional understanding of what Christ is with the world that we find ourselves living in. And that is all the millenary movements, the Anabaptists, the fucking Hussites, they're all powered by this. But they can only be expressed through social structures, which are dominated by the owning class. So it all gets institutionally captured. And if there's a rebellion to go along with it, it's put down bloodily. And it's eventually extinguished around the 1700s. And that God dies. The God who's going to bring us all together in a supernatural reunion, in a huge God just showing up one day and giving everybody a big hug. Like that as a imagined social reality. Like a horizon that we describe to ourselves, imagine in our minds, depict in our art, and reflect back to us aesthetically. We're trying to get that. And then the Reformation is a grasp for that, the 30 Years' War, and the early modern era, all those revolutions and revolts, it's all grasping towards it. But it's all failing because there has not cohered a working class capable of really controlling technology. They are still at the ass end of this relationship. They are geographically and mentally too far from power to do anything other than provide fuel for an inter-ruling class conflict, or rather between one element of the one element of the ruling class and another, the holders of capital and the holders of land. I'm not a repressed believer. I'm a believer. I didn't used to be, but I am now. It's cool. But that dies, and it's replaced by this collective materialism. We think we still have Christianity, but we really don't. We have this Enlightenment conception that suffuses everything, and which, by the way, the fact that it suffuses everything is exactly what makes all the morons who want to erase the Enlightenment so tedious. They don't realize time moves in one direction and that it builds social realities in one direction. And once you've gotten to that level of abstraction, you can't go back unless you have a complete collapse of social conditions and a wiping away of the board. Now, that is what reactionaries want because they want to die in battle. Like there's two types of people under capitalism at the top, and their religions, their worldviews, they might have different vocabularies, given time or place. But undergirding them is a central difference. One group wants to die in battle, and the other group wants to die in their bed. One group wants to be annihilated in righteous combat with a foe. The other group wants to be surrounded by loved ones and told that they were a good person. I should write the Orange Catholic Bible, honestly. I might do that. Um, but the urge doesn't go anywhere. Christianity is now captured by the ruling power. Christianity means rule by an elite because we have to rule in order to decide who goes to heaven and who goes to hell and all this bullshit. It's all packed up in the church they've built and they own it completely because there's no more social reproduction of it because the relationship between the peasantry, the land-based people, and their local religious authority has been annihilated one way or the other. It's been alienated. People have been pulled up, tore out, thrown into the cities where they don't have that relationship. So they cannot reproduce God in a religious sense. But because they are the bottom half, they can imagine it in a physical sense. Like, oh, we can have heaven on earth, not because Jesus is going to show up, but because we are going to overthrow those who rule us and then treat each other the way we want to be treated, which we've learned from the experience of being mutually exploited. And so the continuation of Christianity as it unfolds in an attempt to deal with the increasing technological regime of accumulation that overawes life on the planet, uh, the socialist movement, broadly stated, with Marxism as the approximation of a holy book at its heart, because you need a book, it becomes the next phase of a materialized Christianity that has given up on the hope of going to heaven because it can't believe that that world exists anymore because they can't feel it, they can't taste it. They now live in their head in a way that they didn't before. But we can come together because we believe in each other enough, we love each other enough. And what is love but not an expression of this very thing that we're trying to embody? And in that love, we can overthrow these people, destroy their old gods, and build on earth a life that will allow us, even if we don't believe there's anything after death but a big black curtain, allow us to die easily, allow us to live and then die peacefully. Now, again, there's still going to be people who want to die in battle, but that can be socially productive. That urge can be sublimated into something productive if you're surrounded by a positive social feedback loop. And so that is how you get a society where you've knitted together all these seemingly deep, like, this is human nature contradictions. You can knit them all together, but only if you collectively, as a working class, seize control of this machinery. And the 20th century and the 19th and 20th century, from I would say 1789, yes, 1789 to 1945 is Armageddon. It is a series of battles between Christianity, which is actually Satanism, the worship of the self, against Christianity, the socially embedded religious tradition coming from the bottom. No, I not. Some people say 91, not 91, because as soon as the Yanks get the bomb, the war is over. It's just a question of how long it will take for the armistice to be signed, and it took until 1991. But as soon as the Yankees have the nukes, it's over because this is a real battle. This is not a war of positions. I think this is how you have to understand this. This is a life and death, blood fight. This is a literal holy war. And it's fought everywhere. And after 1945, they keep fighting it, but they start fighting it outside of Europe, outside of Asia, spread it out, and dominate the rest of the world and capitalize the rest of the world. But because those uh, countries, those parts of the world are not united, not knitted together, have no activated working class, their response to this is wholly asymmetrical, and they are in peace defeated, except for the Chinese, who come a little late to the party because they've had this dominating imperial structure and the cyclical spiritual relationship. But by the 19th century, that starts coming under pressure too. And first, you get the Taiping Revolution, an attempt to bring Christianity to the fore and use the Christian millennium to get people to act. But by 1945, that's gone too. That's been extinguished by a century of conflict, and it's replaced by communism, another European import, another teleological import, because you have to have a straightening of the mandala to, in the modern context, direct social forces. But the late 19th and early 20th century is when the real battle begins, because you have organized working class in the cities of the West, politically expressive, mobilized to one degree or another, on the shop floor, at the ballot box, and on the military parade ground to one degree or another throughout Western Europe and the United States. They're in conflict with the state in every case. Some places it's more violent than others. The U.S. very violent, the most violent of outside of South America, of course, which is just America, but because there was less of a European settlement and the more of maintaining a domination over fixed colonial agricultural relationships. that are not really overturned. It expresses itself more violently, but it's violent everywhere. And that violence gets to a point where these capitalist states start having to reform around the turn of the century and allow for mass politics. But this gives the mass access to technologies. Like, now workers can make their own militias and have the same guns that the army has. They can use the technology like the printing press and later radio to reach people. That they can use social mechanisms of organization like the labor union and the political party to express their interest. This is a conflict. This is stress. That stress has to go somewhere. So it goes out to the empire. We can solve this problem at the center by soothing it with colonial exploitation. And it works for a while, but eventually, once you have enough competition and the latecomers like Germany show up at the trough, that's the important thing. You've got countries like Germany emerging on the world scene late because they came together as single polities late and coming to try to solve their social problems with the same colonial expansion that the other ones had. They come into conflict over those things. You have a global war that is the expression of this sublimated class war at the center of capitalism. And this should have emerged, all of the leading socialists thought it would, because first you have the attempt to have the working class parties and unions of Europe refuse to go to war. But of course that fails because while they have been built up, they haven't been built up long enough or durably enough to make that challenge. The time isn't right yet. The degree of militancy doesn't reach the moment. Because it's one thing to fight a war positions in peacetime, but when it's, hey, there's a war, we're going to fight the other powers of Europe, that raises the stakes very fast. And the state is able to match that bet in a way that the labor-based civil society can't. And so they folded their hand. Where didn't they fold their hand? In the United States and in Russia. The places where the working class was farthest from power, but for two different reasons. In America, because we developed this frontier of free real estate, we had this yeoman society that had abolished the peasant relationship. And then we have Russia, which is never got developed. They had the 19th century, they had the 20th century dropped on their doorstep in 1900 on a feudal doorstep. They are almost completely defined by the peasant relationship. Either way, socialism, the creation of a socialist machine, is absent because that working class engine is much weaker. So their stakes are lower. They can say no to the war. You're closer to power, you feel more responsibility. Well, if we're the German Social Democrats and we don't vote for war credits, they're going to kick us out of power because the people are also nationalistic. Well, shouldn't we stay in power? Isn't that better than giving up these controls? Yes. And then they do it, and there you go. It's over. Then the war ends with revolutions, with real social conflict in almost all these countries, which was inevitably going to happen because there had to be. It was going to return to the metropole, and to the countries that lost, it was going to return harder, and it did. The thing is, the country that lost World War I the worst was Russia. They lost so bad that they were effectively out of the war a year early because their working class was so feeble, so was their bourgeois. So they couldn't make a bourgeois revolution. They could try, and they had a thin veneer of one, but it could not hold power, which is why the Bolsheviks were correct to rise in October. There was no what everybody else thought. The Mensheviks and the SRs thought is we'll let them cook. But the thing is, they were not going to cook. They were going to be overthrown by the military because the bourgeois was not strong enough to do it. But the thing that got them going out and seizing was not just that, the tactical thing, because the tactics only get you so far. The Bolsheviks were religious believers. They believed in this extension of the cosmic conflict between good and evil that is going to be resolved at Armageddon. The thing that fueled Christian eschatology, the heart in the heartless world that Marx talks about when he talks about religion. The thing that made them Bolsheviks in the first place and able to recognize the moment and able to act so decisively is because they thought we're going to trigger a world revolution. That is going to, even if we die fighting, we will die building something. We will not surrender to capitalism, which means we will die together, either in either paradise we built on earth or a paradise of action where we are building something. Marx is Luther, Sockdems as Lutherans, Bolsheviks as Calvinists, anarchists as Anabaptists. Perfect. This is all very facile, but I think it is true and meaningful to point out because God didn't go away. And it's just not, God isn't where the language of God is. That's what I mean. Because the working class was defeated in 1945, and the institutions that would have propelled working class towards a conflict with capital in the 70s, which is what happened, where it becomes a world system, becomes self-enclosed, it can no longer expand outward, and therefore will begin to eat itself. The thing that happened with Trajan, the thing that happened with the Ottomans, the thing that's now happening to the United States. And we had institutions that could articulate a social vision of apocalypse to go with the religious fire and brimstone nihilistic fantasy of oblivion that Christians believe in. But now that's gone, and we live in the world where Satan won the Battle of Armageddon. Now that doesn't mean we're damned, though. That's the beauty part of it. It just means that the world as we know it will never be reconciled to us, but we will all, as people, be reconciled. Maybe I'll talk about this next week, but this is the gist of what I'm trying to talk about. I want to get this across. Oy, stay free, people. Bye.